Welcome to Phakama Africa, your unconventional news source.
Here at Phakama Africa Media, we do things differently without conforming to what is done or believed.
Join us on this journey of uncovering the story behind the story.
Welcome to Phakama Africa. My name is Zanele Ntuli, and I'm joined in the studio by Phabano Phasha, the chairperson of the Anti-Poverty Forum. Phabano, you're welcome.
Thank you so much, my queen.
Tell us, what is this Anti-Poverty Forum?
Well, Anti-Poverty Forum is a civil society movement which we started in 2018 to mainly deal with challenges that mainly afflict the African majority, specifically on issues of social injustices and inequalities.
And what your focus, your main focus, would it be social justice?
That's one of the focuses, but perhaps just to give a background.
Yes, please.
If you look at South Africa at the moment, it's what I consider to be a crime scene. You've got a minority, a white minority, which has the wealth or which controls the wealth of the country, and they do not want to share. So they've monopolized the wealth of the country. And when you look at the natives, they're in squalor, they're in degradation. As individuals, they've done very well, but as a collective, the African community is very far behind.
Yeah. That we see that a lot, you know, there's so much imbalances. White people, they believe that they built this country, so therefore they deserve what they have. What do you say to that?
Well, I'm not sure which country has been built. If they speak from a perspective of white privilege, indeed, white people have been able to accumulate for themselves. But if you look at Africans, it's the opposite. But over and above that, I don't think it's true for whiteness or white people to claim that they've built this country. If you look at South Africa, and if you take our history, you are able to see that before white people came to the country, I mean, you had farmers, we had livestock, and you know, we did things for ourselves. And then they came in uninvited. They took our land, they took our livestock, and they took everything. They took our culture, they took our identity, and they turned us into what we are today. If you look at the African community, we cannot do for ourselves. We are divided, we are confused, we cannot work together. If you look at the African family unit, it's at its worst. Fathers are not there, and they're not there deliberately. They're not there because when white people came in, they took African men from their families and they made them work in mines. So it is not true. It is the opposite. Hence, it is important that, you know, civil society like ourselves and other Africans must start coming together so that we start addressing our challenges, not only in South Africa, by the way, because if you look at the entire continent, our challenges are the same. It's white people who control banking. It's white people who control, you know, the hospital sector, or the health sector. So they literally control everything. And we did not ask them, by the way, to come to the country. We did not ask them to come and miseducate us, because that is what is happening at the moment. And that is what has been happening for all the centuries.
In 1994, someone can just say to you that in 1994 you were given independence. You now have a president that is black, and we've had presidents that are black. Now, what would you say to that? Because, I mean, you know, we are no longer oppressed as far as the world can see. What would you say to that?
Well, we are highly oppressed. Politically, we might say that we are free, but what really happened is that in 1994 we were given civil liberties. We were given opportunities, you know, to sit and talk with white people. Remember, they called themselves Europeans, in fact, before 1994.
Yes.
So we were given an opportunity to start going out and having, you know, lunch, dinners with white people, to intermarry with white people, to go to the same schools, to move into the suburbs. with white people. But what we were not given is economic liberties. If you look at the lucky few within the African race who've managed to make it, well, they are there, they stay in the suburbs, but the majority of our people, you still find them in informal settlements, you still find them in the township. And even those ones that you find amongst the white people, they're sinking in debt. So the African community is not liberated, it's worse off. And even the politicians whom are leading us, and if I might also say this, those who negotiated on behalf of the African majority, they did not even consult. So they went in, negotiated with the white minority. They were given the right to form political parties and to contest elections. And that is how it is, you know, even Parliament, if you look at it, it is not serving the interest of the African majority. When you look at the legislations which are there, if you take the CITB Act, if you take PFMA, triple PFMA, and many of the acts, the legislations which are there, they tend to favor the white minority. So things have changed, but they've not really changed.
If you look at the presidents that we've had President Mandela, we have had President Thabo Mbeki, we've had President Motlanthe, although it wasn't that long, and we've had President Zuma, and now we are having President Cyril. So what would you say? I mean, wouldn't you say things changed a bit, you know, or the President Mandela helped us to actually deliver us, like Moses delivered the children of Israel? Would you say that? What is your opinion as far as that is concerned, with all these presidents that we've had in this country?
Well, remember that it was a negotiated settlement. We did not get our freedom through a barrel of the gun. And what history teaches us is that those who are in privilege, or those who are in a position of privilege, they don't hand over their power or their privilege easily. You have to fight for it. So we have never ever fought for our privilege. Even if you look at the white minority, and I would include the English, because from 1884, when our country became a colony of Britain, it was under the British. Then after the British, it was what is now called the Afrikaners. These two white communities, they fought for this country. They had to go to war for this country. We did not fight. You know, we had to sign, our leaders signed, and then there was a negotiated settlement. And, you know, when you look at the leaders that you have mentioned, they were part of the CODESA consensus. And indeed, we are grateful that we can sit here, I can have a conversation with you about the state of our country. But if you look at them and if you look at us, you would agree that they have benefited more than the African majority. It looks like when they negotiated, those or the colonizer said to them, well, let us negotiate, we will give you this, concede to some of these agreements, don't concede to this. And if you do that, we'll be able to compensate you. Because how do you have ANC leaders, all of them in particular, how do you have ANC leaders who after 1994 are suddenly millionaires and are suddenly billionaires and they're not entrepreneurs? How is that possible? I mean, it's even difficult for an ordinary, intelligent, African entrepreneur to get funding, to take or to start off their business. But how is it easy, so easy for, our leaders to have or to have managed to accumulate so much wealth? So indeed, things have changed, but they're still the same, because we can say that we are free, but as I said, we are swimming in debt. Our own children can't speak their own language. We don't speak, we don't have an opportunity to engage in our own language. We do not have an opportunity to praise and worship those that our forefathers worshipped. We do not have an opportunity to sit together as Africans and talk about each other and our problems. We do not have a judiciary, which is able to consider the challenges and the history of the African majority. So how can we say that we are free?
Thank you for that powerful input, Phabano. Ladies and gentlemen, see you after the break.
Welcome to Phakama Africa, your unconventional news source.
Here at Phakama Africa Media, we do things differently without conforming to what is done or believed.
Join us on this journey of uncovering the story behind the story.
Welcome back. We are still sitting with Phabano Phasha. Phabano, there were policies that were introduced in the country when we were given independence. Policies like the BEE. Didn't it create billionaires and millionaires, black billionaires and millionaires? What was wrong with the system? Was it wrong? Was it right? Please just fill us in on that one.
Well, from what I know and the research that we have done, what happened towards the year 2000, Brenhurst Foundation, which is led by the Oppenheimer family, actually presented a policy on economic empowerment, but also its intention was to bring in white businesses and to see how they could get tax breaks. And a few black people were gathered together and the BEE policy came about. What we have seen is that BEE, it's actually an elitist project, because instead of changing the complexity of the challenges or the economic challenges facing the African majority, it actually empowered a few ANC leaders and their friends and family. It did not empower Africans in particular. And what is interesting is that if you look at the people who proposed some of these policies, because you've got your BEE, there was BEE, there were also mining charters. In terms of mining charters and your banking charters, let me just say charters, whites decided that they would give shares to black people. So they decided whom they will give some of the shares to. You had ABSA, which gave some of their shares to the likes of Tokyo Skhwale. You had Standard Bank, which gave shares to the current president and the likes of Sakima Kozoma. You had First Rand Bank or First National Bank, which gave shares to Zanele Mbeki. And at the time, former President Thabo Mbeki was still president. So you had those type of concessions and those type of deals. And if you look at South Africa post-1994 and pre-1994, it was, in terms of empowerment, it was actually different, because there were more than 1,000 laws that were enacted by the British government and by the nationalist government to empower the entire white community. And with us, it was different. That's why if you look at South Africa today, we are seen as one of the most unequal countries, not only in the continent, but in the globe, because our policies, they were so inward. They were not meant to change the status quo. All they did was to breed a new Comrade bourgeois, which will work closely with the white elite.
When you look at our situation in South Africa, we've had people can say, we've got to start somewhere as a people. We cannot, keep on complaining, because in as much as you say that the BEE laws were not fair, however, there were billionaires, if they are real billionaires, because people, there's a lot of talk about that, but there were billionaires that were created by these systems or by these policies. So would you say that we should still keep these policies, or we should forget about them, you know, and try and look at other ways of empowering black people, you know, the majority black people. Would you say that?
Well, how does it assist the African majority that they give their votes
Yeah.
to a political party?
Yeah.
Because that political party claims that when it gets to parliament, it will be able to enact policies that favor the African majority, not a few politicians, not you know, their family or their friends. So there is something that is, you know, adversely wrong with the current system, and also it's a question of political will from these individuals. Now the other challenge, and it's one of, you know, the biggest challenge, is the education system in the country. Because in fairness, we should not even be talking about issues of employment or unemployment. We should be talking about a society or citizens who are able to do for themselves, citizens who do not rely on government, citizens who don't rely on social grants, but citizens who are able to do for themselves. However, our education system perpetuates a system where our people are beggars, where our people are in a cycle, a continuous cycle of poverty. And there lies in the problem. And, you know, just to finish off on this issue, the other thing which I don't know our people, why they're not able to observe it. I mean, you also have politicians who are not taking their children to public schools. You know, so they educate our people to continuously depend on the system, but they take their own children to, you know, to a private schools so that they learn a different type of education system. So there's such a huge disjuncture, and what this tells us, and what the party which is in charge has always taught us, is that power lies with the people. Amandla away to Matlakiarona. So power ultimately is with the people. I don't think that our people should just continuously, you know, just being voting cows. At some point, they must be able to ask, we have been voting for more than 25 years, but we are yet, you know, to see and to feel the ray of sunshine which comes from liberation. So I think all this has to do with the people. The people have to take power into their own hands. They need to start asking questions, because surely the parliament, which is called the parliament of the people, is anti-people, it's anti-poor, it's anti-black. Not only parliament, but the state in totality. Because your state will also include your judiciary. It's mainly Africans who are in jail. So it tells you that there is a serious problem in South Africa, and people need to start asking right questions.
If you look at Africa as a whole, the continent as a whole, I mean, Ghana has been free for over 60 years now. I think they celebrated their independence not long ago, 50 years. I think they are well into 60 years now. And you look at Nigeria, you look at all these countries, and coming down to the SADC. And I happen to have been to Congo, and I've seen, you know, there is a difference of some sort, because when you look at the number of banks that are in these countries, you talk about Congo, you've got about more than 30 banks in one country. And Congo, this is Congo DRC, not Congo Brazzaville. And then you talk about, you come down to Zambia, there's over 20 banks. But yet here in South Africa, we have only 5 banks. So what is your take on that? Would you say our independence has been a unique one, or it has been it has been that's why we're having so many challenges? Just what is your take on that, Phabano?
The ANC calls our independence, or what a so-called independence, they say is colonialism of a special type. Oh, yeah. Because unlike our Zambian counterparts, those who are in Congo and other African countries, they did not live or stay with the settler. Oh. So they were colonized, but the colonizer was in Europe, or the colonizer was in America. But I mean, comparatively speaking, our situation is the same, because, you know, Congo and Francophone countries in particular, their currency is controlled by France. So they might have all these banks, but they don't control their monies. They don't control their flow of money. Congo is one of the richest countries in the world. They've got all the minerals that you can think of, yet they're the poorest. The children of Congo are forever at war with themselves. I mean, you spoke of Ghana. Ghana has been independent, as you rightly said, for a while, but the people of Ghana are not economically independent. You speak of Nigeria with the wealth and the vast oil that they have, yet it's only a small oligarchy which has been able to come out of poverty. I mean, you find Nigerians all over the continent. Even here in South Africa, you've got so many Nigerians who are trying to make a living for themselves because their country, which has so much wealth, is not able to accommodate all of them. And then you also have Zambia. Same problem with the copper that they have. It's controlled by a company in Switzerland. And back home, it's the same challenge. You've got a few white people who control our banking system. And what is worse is that they can give us money to buy cars, but they cannot give us money to buy property because they do not want to empower us. And the challenge ultimately, it's the political parties which are in parliament, because they know that they have or they can change the policies which, which cushion, which protect white supremacy, but they're not doing that. Instead, they want to conform, they want to integrate into the system. They don't want to change the system because the system benefits them. So you have a parliament which continues to protect the banking system, which is in the control of white people. And there's another interesting phenomenon. These banks, and even though I have said what I said about Zambia, I mean, they have tried because it's controlled by, our African, indigenous people. But the difference with us is that we do not have the capital, and with white people, they can just go to the PIC because they also control the asset management companies. Because you can speak of the banking system, but you cannot speak of it in isolation to the financial service sector. Because take a bank like FNB, which is mainly controlled by Rand Merchant Bank, which is part of the Remgro Group, owned and controlled by Rupert. Rupert also has investment companies, and one of those is Rand Merchant Bank. And what they do, and they're very mischievous, devious, but they're very sophisticated. They use asset management companies. Now, these asset management companies, they're able to tap capital injection from the PIC. And the PIC, it's mainly pension funds of government employees who are mainly African. So let's say you are a Zanele, you've got a little bit of capital, you want to start a bank. You will need more capital injection. And if you go to the PIC, you will need an asset management company. But where are the asset management companies that are owned by Africans? They are far and in between. So you have this huge disjuncture within the financial service sector. And we are far behind because, as the majority, we are putting money into a system which is just, it has a huge hole. The water is just leaking out. It's not coming back to feed us. So you are dealing with structural issues. And until we change the structure, until we change institutions that protect this minority and which protect a minority which did not work hard for their money, whites did not work hard for their money, they had to bring in legislations which enabled them to take land from Africans, to enslave Africans, to use, Africans as cheap labor, to arrest Africans who stood up against all of these atrocities. So they did not work hard. They made their wealth from pain, and that is African pain. And in 1994, they then had a government which protected them. So hence as Anti-Poverty Forum, we are saying that our focus is on social injustices because there cannot be peace, if there's not been justice, we need corrective justice. We need, to ensure that we deal with those people who have caused so much harm on the African majority, because they're still there. F.W. de Klerk is still there. He's seen as a paragon of truth and wisdom. You've got the Ruperts who made their monies out of black pay. They're still there. You've got your Oppenheimers who they advise our government. They are still there. All these people acquired their wealth through the back banner of pain, of oppressing and exploiting the African majority. So as Anti-Poverty Forum, we want to deal with these atrocities. We want to confront them. We are very clear that there needs to be reparations, that the African majority must be reparated. And all these people, they really need to account. So you cannot have a Holocaust on such a huge magnitude and you just continue as if nothing has happened. That's why we find ourselves here as African majority, where we don't own anything, where we don't own any media house, where we don't own the banking system, where we don't, as I said, we are nowhere and everywhere at the same time.
With all what you have said, what do you see as the way forward for this country?
Well, history has also taught us that adults like ourselves, we fear change. If you look at changes that have taken place globally, whether it's the change that was instigated by Che Guevara in Burkina Faso, Sankara, Lumumba, Steve Biko, Anton Lembede, it is always young people who are champions of change, who can activate change. What we need in South Africa, we need an overhaul of the system, because we cannot continue, we cannot leave the status quo as it is. South Africa, as I had said initially, is a crime scene, and that needs to change. So we need young people to come out of their comfort zone. We need young people who let fees must fall to come out of their comfort zone, to fight for their, for their total liberation and for their economic independence. So me and you, we can continue sharing the ideas. We can continue imparting some of the knowledge, but it's incumbent on young people to carry on and take the spear, and take the fight forward, because what they are going to inherit is this crime scene. They are going to inherit debt. They are going to inherit a country which is not in their interest, or it's not in their best interest. And we are here to take this journey with them and to assist them on this course.
Thank you very much, Phabano, for that contribution. As she says, South Africa is a crime scene. Do you think that is the case? Is South Africa a crime scene? Leave your comments on our social media platform. I am your host, Zanele Ntuli. Catch me on our next episode.